Hello, my name is Francisco and this is Group 1. Today, we are going to look more deeply to Huawei in 2019, when President Trump decided to ban completely this Chinese company from the United States market. Although this had and still has so many impacts at many different levels, we are going to focus in overall environmental analysis on the smartphone industry in 2019. So, after a brief introduction, we will explain a pastel analysis at a global and also at a local level. We will show the customer segmentation and the strategic groups of this industry. Then, the flow of the value chain, and at the end, where is Huawei's customer focus and where is Huawei's positioning itself as a strategic group. Regarding Huawei, they grew shipments in Q2 by 8%, as the global smartphone market fell 2% year-on-year to 332 million units. But this growth is much lower than in previous quarters. Its performance was propped up by China, where it grew 31%, shipping more than 37 million units. But it was heavily affected overseas by its addition to the US Entity List, which has risked its trading relationships with US companies, resulting in, besides a drop in sales, no more Android system or Qualcomm chips as suppliers. And this led to a 17% fall in its overseas smartphone shipments to 21.4 million units. Customers in key overseas markets, such as Europe, were suddenly worried by uncertainties regarding the security and lifespan of Huawei smartphones. But at the same time, Huawei's internal chipset and modern technologies will give it an edge over its competitors, as 5G is commercialized by Chinese operators. Patrick will now talk about this and much more through a global pastel analysis.
Thank you, Francisco, for the introduction. To understand the smartphone industry's global macro context, we scanned the environment for political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legislative trends, which is what Francisco introduced as the pastel analysis. To make the analysis insightful, we added the trends, impact on the demand and supply for smartphones. As you know, I'm no fan of reading PowerPoint slides to people, so I'm going to focus on what we think are the 4 key global macro trends at the time of the case in 2019. The first key trend is the rise of nationalism and isolationism. In 2019, Trump was the president of the United States, and under his presidency, the US was pursuing an American first foreign policy doctrine, which also included very strong anti-Chinese rhetoric. But it wasn't just the US. Similar trends could be observed in other parts of the world, notably Europe and South America. The impact was that the demand for certain smartphone brands would increase or decrease in certain markets depending on the market sentiment towards the brand's origin country. The second trend is closely connected, which is the trade war between the US and China. Because of the imposed tariffs and bans, consumer prices rose as the cost was passed on to them, leading to reduced sales. The trade war also led to increasingly disrupted global supply chains that increased the overall production costs in the smartphone industry, leading to a decreased supply. The third trend is the rise of 5G. This new technology will lead to better and broader network coverage across the world, and thus increases the number of potential smartphone users, which in turn leads to more demand for smartphones. The last key trend is the growing consumer demand for more ecological practices in the entire industry value chain. In 2019, the Time magazine selected Greta Thunberg as the Person of the Year, which we think perfectly exemplifies the momentum of the trend. In terms of impact on the demand, we think that ecological practices will become key differentiators going forward from 2019. Consequently, ecological smartphone brands will see increased demand, while unecological players will see decreased demand. For the supply, it will mean it's likely to decrease as the production costs increase in the pursuit of meeting consumer sustainability expectations. That's it from a global perspective. Next, Yolanda will take you through another Pestel analysis, but this time focused specifically on China, the country in which Huawei generated most of its revenue in 2019.
Thank you, Pat. Now I'll take you through the Pestel analysis of the smartphone industry in China. So between 2018 and 2019, Chinese brands such as Huawei and ZTE had their phones blocked by the US completely under allegations of national security. This led to a rise of nationalist sentiment in China, resulting in a boycott of US products and increased purchase of Chinese brands. Unfortunately, however, this meant that Chinese branded phones bought or ordered online and shipped to US consumers were diverted and blocked from use. The US and other allies continue to feel threatened by growing influence of Chinese companies, especially within the sectors of tech and telecom. This resulted in billions of dollars of losses from blocked sales, and it meant that Huawei and ZTE were blocked from participating in the 5G rollout occurring across multiple markets and releasing new smartphone models in those respective markets. However, the Chinese economy continued to grow exponentially, which meant that Chinese people had more money to spend, making them active consumers, and it continued to create opportunities for the growth and proliferation of Chinese companies. Unfortunately, at the same time, this reflected a rise in labor costs, which meant that there was a likely increase in overhead costs, often translated into increased costs for the final consumer, which would likely lead consumers to pursue cheaper and less specialized brands. In terms of its society, there was an increase of the elderly population in China, which unfortunately doesn't bode well for the tech industry, especially smartphones, because they don't tend to be the most dexterous users of tech. So this may impact sales negatively. However, smartphone companies could develop models and campaigns to try to bridge the generation gap, as these users tend to have a lot of downtime on their hands. In terms of technology, the rollout of 5G across the world continued to increase interest in the purchase of 5G-capable smartphones. Unfortunately, however, this negatively impacted sales if Chinese citizens believed that their phones bought in China wouldn't work with 5G abroad. At the same time, this could prove both beneficial and detrimental, since they'd have to look for alternatives to gain market share once more, but it would also allow them to begin researching 6G wireless internet connectivity to signal to the market their continued prowess in the area of R&D. There continued to be an interest in the further use of artificial intelligence in tech, particularly in Chinese smartphone models that tend to have better AI features than their American or Korean counterparts, which of course encourages further use from tech-savvy users. In terms of the environment, the smartphone industry in China was also pushed towards taking on more eco-friendly initiatives, which of course is an added promotional benefit, but can ultimately have additional costs for consumers, but could also promote the use of national suppliers for alternative sources of energy. In terms of legislation, the ban in the US continues to be the biggest trend, with it a significant negative impact on sales if Chinese citizens believe their phones might be confiscated or blocked from usage abroad. Furthermore, Chinese companies then can't sell their smartphones in one of the biggest consumer markets of the world. Thank you. Now on to my colleague Pedro for some customer segmentation.
Thanks, Yolanda. After having this context overview, now we need to look at the market as a whole and try to see how we are going to group the different customers in order to create segments that are going to be the ones that the companies inside this industry will target in order to fulfill their business strategies. With this said, we need to analyze this market, and we can see that this is a business to consumer market, and with the criteria we have available, the process criteria, the motivation and the settings ones, we will look at the detail that we have in our customer database, and we will check the ones that we think are most important to us, which are the process criteria, the who, the what, and the how much, but also the motivation criteria why. With this said, we get to 6 different segments. The entertainer, which wants a performance product but has a limited budget. The socializer, who also wants a performance product but has a little bit more money to spend on this product. We also have the value chaser, that wants the best product for the best price. The heavy user, that wants the best product but is available to pay more than the value chaser for the product. We also have the business focused, that can be an employee or an entrepreneur, with a wide variety of budgets is available depending on the position and the objective of this purchase. We also have the family focused, that is a person who needs a product that is reliable with a specific purpose and has a limited budget for this purchase. After this, we need to consider this segment and try to think about 2 criteria that we are going to choose to create a distribution of this in the market. The 2 criteria we thought were the best were the age, but also the why, the reason to use. And with this said, we were able to distribute the different segments, as you can see in this graph. The entertainer and the family focused as being the more personal ones, spread through the ages. The entertainer younger sector as the family older sector. The socializer, that is more personal but can be a little bit more near the business one. The value chaser, that has a wide variety of ages and also a wide variety of reasons to use the product. And the heavy user and the business focus, that are more related to business but can also have different ages in the sector. With this said, we will pass to the strategy groups, and I will pass the word to Jake. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Now let's look at strategic groups. A strategic group is a set of business firms that pursue similar strategies with similar resources. Categorizing firms in any one industry into a set of strategic groups is very useful as a way of better understanding the competitive environment. Another reason why doing a strategic group is that research shows that some strategic groups in the same industry are more profitable than others, because the corporation's structure and culture tend to reflect the kinds of strategy it follows. Companies or business units belonging to a particular strategy groups within the same industry tend to be stronger rivals and tend to be more similar to each other than to competitors in other strategy groups within the same industry. Looking at the smartphone industry, we mapped a 2-dimensional graph by using 2 of the most important strategic variables: price range and product line breadth. We looked at the 18 smartphone manufacturers and divided them into 10 strategic groups. Among all the competitors, the company that shared the most business characteristics in common with Huawei is Oppo. They have a similar strategy of producing mid-volume of a mix of priced smartphones, targeting both high-income and mid to low-income customers. It also means Oppo is the strongest rival of Huawei. That's why they are in the same strategy group. Notably, Samsung also shares a lot in common with Huawei. However, Samsung has more than 40 models of phones on the market, which is far more than what Huawei offers. In addition, Samsung's cheapest phone doesn't go as low as Huawei's, the price. My colleague Philip will talk more about the strategic group of Huawei later. But before that, let's listen to what Francisco wants to share.
Thank you, Jack. The value chain of smartphone is a vast and a complex web of vendors that manufacture and distribute the ever-growing number of components that mobile devices are built from. To compete in the smartphone market requires extensive access to the various required component technologies. A smartphone is composed of numerous sophisticated components including the baseband chipset, application processor, panel, touchscreen, sensor, case, etc. Qualcomm, Broadcom, MediaTek and Intel are the main component suppliers in the smartphone manufacture. To optimize product design, a vendor must have intimate access to all components technologies. And this becomes more relevant when many of the essential materials and components in the manufacture of smartphones face an unprecedented shortage. So as we can see, the value chain is divided in three main chains. 1. The components, where raw materials are transformed in key components such as battery, system on a chip, or SoC as they call, or memory cards. The devices, where are the companies that research, develop, and assemble the smartphones. And the third phase, devices and service, where the carriers and retailers are providing the service and the devices, allowing the customer to have access to the smartphones and be able to use it. Now, Flip is going to talk about Huawei's customer focus.
Now we are going to talk about Huawei's focus on customers according to the customer segmentation done for the smartphone industry. From this sample, it is possible to see that Huawei has a very diverse range of products and prices regarding its phone models, and that it targets all the 6 mentioned customer segments. From the most basic phones to premium models, Huawei tries to appeal to those different types of customers that either want simple phones they can use, to good price quality options that meets the needs of each user, like the value chasers, to the top tech ones. The needs are very diverse, and so Huawei does try to offer alternatives, like the different types of the P30 model or equivalents, from light versions aimed to family, entertainment, or work, to more advanced models that can meet the needs of heavy users, socializers, and business executives. Regarding Huawei's strategic group, it makes sense that only Oppo is at this time Huawei's only smartphone competitor that fits in this group, as other competitor companies have either a much lower or higher numbers regarding the two chosen variables: the smartphone model diversity and their price range. As a comparison, for example, Apple has fewer models than Huawei, while Samsung has many more models to offer to their clients. Oppo's similarity to Huawei related to this strategic group can be seen in the table to the right. Please note that this comparison was made with prices and models from today, but we consider them equivalent with the values from 2019. However, before the US ban occurred, the annual revenues of both companies were quite different. Huawei's revenue was growing every year, while Oppo had a stable but much lower one, reaching about a fifth of Huawei's revenue in 2019.
Thank you, Philippe. This concludes our environmental analysis of the smartphone industry. We hope this helps you to better understand the macro context in which Huawei operated at the time of the case in 2019. Thank you for your time and see you tomorrow in class.